Hey folks, Ben Haggett here, Alla Prima Pochade guy. I make them, design them, and we're going to shoot a little setup video of the Bitterroot Lite. Everything fits in that little backpack there. It's a very early spring day, and we'll get going here in a second. Okay, so this is the Bitterroot Lite. I've just set it up on the tripod, which is a little Sarui tripod. And you can see how I hang my pack. There's a counterweight. That makes the whole setup much more stable than if you're not counterweighting. So always try and do that if you can. All right, the box itself. First thing, opening. This little D-ring here. That door pulls open. Box opens up. You can see that I have some paintbrushes stored in there. I have the divider. I have this little support arm that we'll take a look at later. Palette knife. You have 5/8 inch of space here. So you can store slimmer things while you're walking around. And this little palette in here, this auxiliary palette, is floating over the main palette. So you can also have paint underneath it. All right, so let's take a look at, why don't we put a panel on, and we'll take a look at the panel holder and see how that works. First thing, this is the lower ledge, and it is adjustable. It goes up and down. This is the upper ledge. It slides up and down. It's on a spring. I'm going to grab a panel out of here. Got a little wax on there. So this is a 10 by 12 panel that I cut. And just to show you how this works, sets up like that. You can scooch it up and you can push it down. So if I were going to paint looking that way, landscape style, plenty of room to do a portrait. So that's 12 inches there. And this will actually go a bit over 16 inches vertically, whereas the horizontal, it's kind of unlimited. At a certain point, if you go really big, you're going to be pushing out on the edges, and that might be overcome the panel holder, but it's pretty secure. I mean, I've tipped the box sideways and stuff. It stays where it is. All right, I'm going to now, if I were setting up to paint, I'm going to move some things around, and I'll put this auxiliary palette on. We'll take a look. The auxiliary palette, like I said, it's resting in here, floating above the main palette, and you just pull it out. Here's your main palette. Here's your auxiliary palette. This can go on this side. It can go on that side. If you don't want to use it, you don't need to. But for those people who like a little extra workspace, it just goes on like that. There are some brush holes over here. I'm going to grab my brushes and we'll see if these will fit in some different places. That's how that might look. And I've also set this palette up to accommodate a few other things we'll take a look at. Okay. I've also drilled some holes in the auxiliary palette so that you can do things like hang a brush washer. This little carabiner. Note that, you know, the brush washer, the brushes and stuff, this is all my stuff, but I'm just showing you how it works. This carabiner, you know, will come with, and it's really handy for hanging a brush washer there. Obviously a 1/8 inch auxiliary palette is designed for, so you can clip palette cups on if you want to use those. This is a palette knife I had kicking around. I often use a palette knife for scraping, for cleaning the palette. It can sit on one of those magnets there. And at this point, if you were me, you'd be thinking about setting out some paint. All right, so laying out paint, how I would do it, I tend to lay out my paint on the edges in ribbons. Longer ribbons instead of like a big glob. I find that a lot easier to pull clean paint from. but it will also help you later when you put this back on top. If you don't have any super tall piles, but 3/8 inch, that's a pretty big paint pile. You would have to work pretty hard. And the worst that could happen is you get a little paint on the bottom of this and you clean it up later. No big deal. Okay, this palette, the main palette, I use Baltic birch. I like that. You can see here, it's not very reflective like glass is. It's also lighter and it doesn't break. As you use your palette more and more, using oil paint, you're going to be rubbing linseed oil and pigment into it again and again and again, and it will develop a really smooth gray patina that's very nice to work on. It's very neutral. These little clips are what's keeping the palette, held down so it doesn't float around. Pull those clips. I have a little thing you can grab here. Nothing fancy. Alright, so that palette lifts completely out. Now in this space, you have 1 1 1/4 of depth, 1 1/4. That is, and you have, with the palette in, you have 1 1/8. That is enough for 37 mil tubes. So, let's just real quick take a look. Okay, like I said, if you didn't want to carry this, or you wanted to carry this separately, just stuff it in your pack or something, and you're not putting it in here, you have 1 1/8. So 37 mil tubes will fit in there. So you could, if you wanted to, if you cleaned your palette after you paint, you could throw 37 mil tubes in there along with your brushes and stuff like that, and have a bit more storage. If you want to play it that way, you're more than welcome to. Just wanted to show you that real quick. Okay, I just brought a little 8x10 panel along so I could demonstrate how the divider works for you. It's pretty simple. Sometimes you might decide that you want to work 8x10 or work 6x8 instead of working 9 or 10x12. So you can do that. This divider is going to slide on this little metal track here. It's important, for the most part, when you're putting this in and out, it just slides straight up, straight down. Alright? And then I'm going to take my 8x10. This is at 8 inches. And so you can store like that. And have an 8x10 wet panel, 2 8x10 wet panels in there. The divider, when you're not using it, you could also put 6x8 in there. When you're not using it, it will store it on top of that guy when it goes in there. Okay, so there may be times when you want to paint with your box much more oriented vertically, sort of flat in front of you. That might be to control light on the palette, or you might just prefer it that way. What that does do, there's no problem, obviously, with doing that, and it'll open pretty much flat. So, no problem with doing that. It does make your auxiliary palette tilted as well, which if you're using a palette cup or something, you might want to have that, more flat. So, you can do that. I make this is just a little support arm. And we'll stick that on there and look at adjusting the auxiliary palette angle relative to the box. So here I've just flipped it down. This little guy is going to hook in there. And then let's go ahead and try that there. So I've just hooked, just like I attached it to the box, except now it's attached to this little arm, and that helps you keep your auxiliary palette flatter while you're working at a more straight up and down angle with the box. Obviously with oil paints and stuff, they don't tend to slide around too much unless it's super hot. So you can work pretty much like straight up and down if you want to. You can see this has little steps, so it'll work with a variety of angles, but it's not totally infinitely adjustable. All right, that bugs you, you'd rather have it more symmetrical. It's also going to be optional. We can do 2 little half-wing pallets, and I'll take this apart and we'll take a look at that in a minute. So I've ditched the full-size internal pallet, and I put the 2 halves in there. So they function exactly the same. It's just you're going to have one on each side now instead of one big one on one side. So this will be, something you can do. This will be an optional thing. I still have the box quite tipped here. So now you have the 2 half pallets on, half auxiliary pallets. And there'll be 2 arms too. So you can do the same thing that I just did with the full-size pallet and flatten one out or flatten both out. Be totally up to you. So you could have it set up like this if you wanted. Keep one flat. Put your pallet cup on there, wherever you wanted. Suppose I do that. Brushes obviously could do the same thing. You could put this over here if you wanted. Move that guy around. So quite a few options here as far as how you set up to get things working the way you want them to, and depending on the conditions you're working in. Okay, so let's suppose that I've just finished painting. I've got paint all over this. Still got my paint ribbons out. Got a little leftover paint. That's all right. It's cool. I like to wipe down my mixing area and just rub it down with my last brush cleaning paper towel. It helps build up that patina I was talking about earlier. But you've just finished painting. You're gonna take maybe you were super productive and you got 2 of them. So you got 2 wet panels here. You're gonna put them wet paint out. And slide them in there. Drop them in the box like so. You're going to take apart these guys if you've been using them. However you want to go about doing that. There's no rules. It's just whatever you work out that makes sense for you. So you got paint around here. I'm just going to kind of carefully set it in. So there it is, floating above. See that space? Okay, so I've put these back in. They're just floating there. So what will fit in here? Your divider will fit in here. Box will still close up. You put some brushes in here. Some of these are full length and they fit okay. As far as how you arrange things, I mean, I don't know, man. It's gonna be really up to you how you go about doing that. If you get into a situation where you're like, well, this won't close because this thing is going to get in the way, the lower ledge, it is removable. You can take it off and put it somewhere else. It's just when you get a bunch of magnets going around, you're going to find things jump and attract to each other and stuff. Watch how I take this off. I'm going to tip it away. The magnets are really strong. If you just start pulling on it, you're never going to move it anywhere. So I'm like just rotating it away. I'm going to sit there. As long as this has a little space it can go into, should be pretty good. So let's close that up. And at that point, you're closed up. You're ready to pull it off the tripod, put your stuff away, and you are out of here. Okay, once again, Bitterroot Lite. It is a 10 by 12 box. And so 10 by 12, 9 by 12, and with the divider, 8 by 10, 6 by 8, 8 by 8. you could carry all those wet. And it is, yeah, 4 pounds, 2 ounces in this form. And that's about it for me for now. And hopefully we'll see you out there painting. All right.